Hello, it's Justin here for another video, and I thought this one would be quite relevant because I have been experiencing some burnout as of recently, and it's led to a lot of different complications in my job, and I actually ended up leaving my job, which is unfortunate because I've been at my organization for about 10 years, and it's really helped me get more clarity on this whole idea around, or this notion of burnout and what it really looks like. And I think this is something that comes into play with those who are at WGU, especially those who are degree accelerators. Those are individuals who are trying to kind of fast track the path of getting their degree maybe within the 6-month block or even a year. And when you go through that process, there can be consequences to your own physical health, mental health, and I thought I would just share a little bit about my understanding of burnout and maybe what you can do to start to help yourself work through that process. So when we're thinking about what is burnout, the experience of burnout can be this very persistent feeling. At work, there can sometimes be this feeling of being disengaged because of being overworked. So overworked as in you're just doing too many different tasks all at the same time and for a long period of time, that persistent feeling of kind of exhaustion. Also, another thing people don't realize is that being underworked can lead to this feeling of burnout, which means that maybe you're not really engaged and you don't have enough tasks, or you don't have enough motivation, or you're not actually producing enough in your degree or your work where you feel like you're accomplishing anything. And that feeling, that persistent feeling, can also lead to burnout. Now, when it comes to degree accelerators, being overworked is probably more common, where you are producing a lot. And so, for example, there was 30 papers in my degree program, and it was about the halfway mark where I really started to feel like the process was getting tedious, especially because it was nice outside and I didn't really want to sit at home all weekend long and write. And writing, people don't realize, is a very laborious process because it's something where you have to focus for quite an extended period of time and dedicate quite a bit of effort into brainstorming ideas, writing, revising, going back, fixing, and then really trying to ensure that what you're saying through your writing is meeting the criteria. And a lot of the times you could have written a lot of information and then realize, this isn't really hitting the mark. And that's very frustrating. Studying is the same way, where you're having to really focus and you're getting tired of spending your evenings and your afternoons and your weekends constantly trying to stay committed to this process. Now, luckily, people go through cycles where, they might go through this kind of mini burnout, or it might not even burnout, it's just kind of feeling frustrated at the process. I would say it goes back to this idea that burnout is quite persistent. So let's say you are doing course after course after course after feeling this laborious feeling, or this tediousness, or this frustration, that can start to really weigh down on you. And for example, at my work, what was happening is I was doing 2 jobs in one because wasn't able to, because of the union I worked at, they went through this long process of hiring my replacement, which never ended up happening. So I was doing my old job and my new job. And over an extended period of time, I found it not only frustrating, I just found it not motivating at all. So when you are doing things that are not motivating, that can also lead to burnout. I find that demotivation also relates to this idea of values misalignment. So sometimes you can get demotivated if what you're doing doesn't align with the things that are important to you or those values. Values misalignment might be like you're writing about something in a performance assessment that does not resonate for you at all. So for example, I was writing a lot at one point on standards-based education because I did a master's of curriculum and instruction, and it was primarily focused on K-12, though I was a post-secondary teacher and career coach, and I didn't really do standards-based education. That wasn't a thing. And I had to do all this writing about it, and at one point, I just didn't agree with it at all. I just didn't feel like standards-based education was the best format of learning, and I wanted to write more about that. So let's say that you are being overworked in some ways, other ways you're being underworked, and then there's this values misalignment or this just lack of interest or motivation, and that can all really drain your energy. So when you are feeling overworked as one of these conditions around burnout, what can you do? So for me, what was really important is to ask myself, well, do I need rest? Do I need to take a rest or a break from this process? And I've talked about this in other videos where I actually needed to detach from writing. And I would actually give myself a little bit of grace and a little bit of a break so that I didn't constantly grind out papers when I was feeling this burnout feeling. And now, not always do you need like a long rest. Like you might not necessarily need like a whole week off, but even let's say you typically work on a Saturday, maybe just skip that Saturday and kind of give yourself a day where you aren't thinking about WGU or work. Another question you have to ask yourself is, are you just doing too much? So there is a point by which you are dedicating too much of your time and energy to one thing in your life. And that could be anything. That could be family. That could be your paid work in your life. That could be your schooling. That could be a hobby of yours. And if you're doing too much, too fast, and at too much intensity, you could just physically drain your energy. Now, this is going to be a little bit problematic for those who are doing the accelerated path, because you may have to experience some of that intensity in order to kind of keep yourself moving. And that intensity could lead to some exhaustion. So you have to ask yourself, are you capable of doing this program in this period of time? And you can see in my videos, there were moments where I had to question. I had to say, can I physically do this? And there may be some kind of negotiation you have to do with yourself to say, is it possible for me to do it in the 6 months if you are really physically getting drained? So for example, at my job where I was feeling this burnout feeling, I was getting physically ill. And I was starting to question, is doing all this work worth me compromising my health? And my answer was no. But at WGU, I never got to that point where physically I was actually getting ill. So luckily that was a good sign. But if you are getting to that place, you might have to say to yourself, am I doing too much work, and is it affecting me negatively, particularly with regard to my physical and mental health? And another question you can ask yourself if you feel like you might be overworking is, do I have any bit of flexibility here? Because like I've mentioned in that video about consistency intensity for completing that accelerated degree, you do also need some degree of flexibility in order to kind of work through the program with ease. Even if there are moments of intensity, you may have to back off a bit, and that means being flexible in taking a week off, or just giving yourself kind of that grace period where you don't do so much. Now, if you're in the situation where you're feeling underworked, and that is maybe because you are having a hard time self-directing your learning, motivating yourself, getting in the habit of doing assignments, and you just don't feel like you're doing enough, and that can be very draining. I know it doesn't sound like that's the case, but it can be draining because a lot of the times there's a lot of negative self-talk, right? You've experienced this before where you constantly saying to yourself like, oh, I should be doing more. Why am I not working? I'm never going to finish this degree on time. Am I wasting my money? I'm never going to complete this. That can be very draining. And so you may need to just gain a few more strategies on task management. And like, if you don't know how, I mean, there's a bazillion videos on YouTube on how to manage your time, manage your energy. Now, time management, a lot of people seem to think it's all about time. So time is not made up of just time. Time is one piece. So meaning, do you actually have time to complete a task? So for example, in a week, if you like have a lot going on, like you've got a reunion to go to, you've got a child's soccer game a couple times a week, you've got 40-hour week work week, you may not have a lot of time. Now, so therefore, you have to figure out things to cut out in order to give yourself more time for WGU or other things you're wanting to do. Another piece of it is energy. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're overworking, you might be depleting your energy and just not physically have the energy to do things. Or mentally. It takes a lot of mind space to keep yourself motivated and concentrating, and you have to think of mechanisms that bring you energy. So for me, I use different breathing techniques. I do a lot of walking, resting. I also do things that excite me in my life. So, I'm quite a creative person, so I engage in different creative activities. And so I need to balance my life in order to allow myself to build energy and not just deplete my energy reserves. And then also with time management, we have to talk about attention. So even if you have the time and energy, are you able to pay attention and spend time focused in a concentrated effort to complete these tasks? Or are you constantly distracted by your phone, by all these things in your life that are grabbing your attention, by your children, by, just constantly feeling like you have to go do something other than your homework? So there are mechanisms that you can do to bring back your attention, like even things like mindfulness meditation can help you train yourself to get better at concentration. I would also go back and watch that video on intensity and consistency when we're thinking about being underworked or disengaged. And that can remind you that you need a little bit of that feeling of intensity in the process. And so, let's say that you are feeling demotivated and you're just like not in the mood. You need to build in self-discipline, and that may not be comfortable. I use that analogy in the video of working out and how, you're working out those bicep curls, or you're doing those bicep curls and, you're feeling like a little bit of that intensity, but you don't want to just drop the weights in that moment when you are building strength or building muscle. You want to kind of do a couple last reps. And you need to feel that a little bit of tension in order to kind of move yourself forward. Another thing that's really important is having an accountability buddy when you're feeling underworked. So somebody that knows some of your goals, knows some of your aims and missions, whether it is to complete the program in 6 months, and for them to check in with you. And I did this a lot. I had 2 people in my life that knew my goals. They would kind of message me throughout the week. I would kind of give them updates. And that really helped me feel like they were being accountable with me, or just helping me become more accountable. I would also say get inspired. So go back, watch my videos, or watch people's videos on WGU that have done this in 6 months or under a year. But there are many people who have done the same goal that you have and done it successfully. Maybe it doesn't even have to be WGU, just people who are doing kind of things like maybe students who are in medical school, because those people who are doing really major learning activities, such as trying to be a doctor, have to exercise a lot of willpower and a lot of discipline and a lot of commitment. And watching them is like, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. And that can be helpful when you are feeling like you're not doing enough or you're disengaged. Now, when we have this issue with burnout around this values misalignment, so doing something that just doesn't resonate and that feels like it's just not aligned with who you are, you have to ask yourself, like, well, is it tolerable? Because, maybe it's just one paper and you have to write this paper and it's not connecting to you, but it's just a paper. Maybe just do it as an activity and then move on. Now, if your whole degree is a values misalignment, ask yourself, why am I doing this degree? Is this something that I should be dedicating my life effort to? Because you have only so much time and energy, and you don't want to be wasting it on something that's not going to benefit you. Now, if you're doing it for very pragmatic reasons, because you need, like this specific degree to advance in your career, you have to ask yourself, is that enough of a reason to continue this program if there's a lot of misalignment? Is there another option for you? Like, could you transfer into a different program that's a better fit? I mean, people do it all the time. As a career coach, the majority of clients I worked with was students who were constantly changing their majors because, so much of our learning is about testing and learning. And, maybe you have to try a program to discover it's not for you. Sometimes you can negotiate, particularly in jobs rather than maybe your degree, but let's say in your work, you can negotiate different things. Like, let's say in your job, like something's not resonating, such as this structured hours that you have. You can negotiate with your employer for flexible work, maybe a part-time arrangement. Now, when you're in your schooling, let's say WGU, it's maybe harder to negotiate. Like, you can't really say, hey, can I do this course instead of this course? But, you could actually say, is there maybe something I could swap out? Because this course isn't going to support me in my degree for this and this reason. Maybe I could take an equivalent course. And I think a lot of people are afraid to negotiate because they're afraid of rejection. But, even within my degree, I was able to negotiate with my mentor at the end of the degree because I was unsure if I could complete the degree in 6 months, and I needed an extra month to basically finish everything on time. There was an extra month that was available that I could apply to, but I had passed the date by which I could apply for that extra month. But I kind of said to her, like, if I can complete at least this and this assignment by this specific date, would you be still open for me applying to this extra month? And she said, normally we don't do this. And I said, but you know, I could prove to you that I'm capable of finishing on time, and I kind of outlined all the reasons. And so don't be afraid to kind of put yourself out there and speak up for what is important to you if it's reasonable. In the end, she was willing to negotiate with me, and she was willing to give me an extra month if I could complete certain activities at a certain date. But it's funny because I was so motivated at the very end of my degree, I didn't need that extra month. And actually, I finished the degree in 5.5 months, not 6 months. Those are some of my thoughts around burnout, which is that persistent feeling of being overworked or underworked or having that values misalignment. And there are some strategies that I mentioned. Let me know what some of your thoughts are about this in the comments below. Do feel free to, like and comment, because it does help me stay motivated as well to create some of these videos, because I'm not in the WG program anymore, and I do want to help you and support you, that when I know that you're engaged and you want some of these videos, I feel more motivated to make them for you. All right, I will see you in the next video.